Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Collective Conspiracy Show. I do like that graphic, so I'm going to use it as often as I can. I don't know which way to do it round though. Like, do I put it on first and then? Because sometimes I've done it, and then it ends, and then the screen's blank, and it doesn't look very professional. So I try to make it as professional as possible. Anyway, you're watching the Collective Conspiracy Show with myself, Kieran, and guest regular Andrew Johnson. How are you, Andrew?
I'm sort of reasonably okay, all things considered. I haven't gone quite insane yet, but I'm getting there.
No, yeah, we're getting there. Not so insane that you're going to consider having a vaccine, though. I hope.
No, I'm not going to have. I'm not going to have the experimental biological agent. No.
That's good. Good to hear. We must do another show on COVID soon. It's been too long. It's been like 5 weeks or something. I don't know, and a lot happens in that time.
There has been quite a lot of going on, hasn't there? Yes,
absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll definitely do another show on that. But for today, we're talking about predictive programming, and actually, COVID plays quite a big part in this. I've got a bit of a segment on COVID as we go, and what I've done is similar to the Mandela effect that people may have watched. I've just put together a little presentation to show some pictures and some quotes and stuff. Just to show how predictive programming works. But for those that don't watch, because I am very aware that the people that tune into this show are predominantly from a paranormal background. And this is kind of maybe they're dipping their toe into the conspiracy world. And hopefully we don't come across as the tinfoil hat nutters that the media portray us as. And hopefully we make you think. I have had some very kind comments from people saying that we've made them think and we've changed their mind on a few things. And that's what we plan to do. We're not going to go too deep tonight because this is a topic you could talk about forever. But we're just going to kind of skim the surface, give an outline of what predictive programming is, how it can work, and then let you guys go away and do your own research, which is ultimately what it's all about, really, doing your own research. So predictive programming, for those that don't know, is when through means like the media, it could be through music, it could be through film, it could be through TV shows. They potentially set things up without you knowing to get you to subconsciously accept what's going to happen or what might happen. And it's done through repetition. It's done through coercion in a way. And it's done through subliminal messaging in a lot of ways as well. We'll touch on that tonight. Andrew, I mean, predictive programming is a fascinating subject, but it can be quite depressing because, when you really dig down and see, they're putting it in our faces, a lot of this, that they're putting it in our faces and people still can't see it. And do you think that's a problem?
I think that's part of the objective, though, isn't it? They don't want people to see it initially because my understanding is that this is to do with occult practices, and how you manipulate people's consciousness, basically. And you mentioned there about the subconscious. And so the objective, I think, is to put it in to your subconscious, not to your conscious mind. And then by doing that, the occult method says then that you are the person whose subconscious has been infiltrated is tacitly giving consent, because it means that person is in a state where they don't really fully understand themselves. They don't really fully understand, the facets of their own being. And so they are therefore open to manipulation. I think, that's one of the things about enlightenment, what these Freemasons and stuff talk about, is that they essentially will, I think in the sort of more secret teachings, they will explain how some of that works and what the soul and that sort of thing and the mind and how it all interoperates, which isn't really explained anywhere else. You get bits of it in religion and stuff. But obviously maybe I'm skipping ahead a bit, but it's basically to put these messages into the subconscious when you have nefarious intent, because if you didn't have nefarious intent, you wouldn't need to try and sort of use the back door to get into people's subconscious and their consciousness.
And also it plays into what has now been dubbed famously by David Icke as the problem reaction solution scenario. And this is where you might hear a lot of people talk about this again for people watching. And this is where these people, these ruling elite, will create a problem that ultimately they want they know what they're going to do about this problem already. But in order to get the public backing, in order to make it look like it wasn't such a big totalitarian tiptoe from A to Z, they have to kind of set it up. And what they do is they create a problem. They then wait for the reaction from the public, the outcry, or the praise maybe, and then they kind of offer a solution to the problem that they created in the first place. And just a very shortened example of that is something like 9/11, where they potentially want to go to war in the Middle East for various reasons that we won't get into, and they have to create a problem. So if they just decided to invade various countries in the Middle East, there'd be uproar. The public could be saying, you can't do that. Why are we doing this? So they have to create a reaction. They have to get a reaction. So they create a problem, which was the killing of thousands of American civilians, at which point the public kind of jump up and go, whoa, we need to do something about this. And then the US government offer a solution, which the public are now happy with, and they get what they wanted all along. And that can be achieved through predictive programming.
Right. And yeah, while you were speaking there, Kieran, a thought came into my mind. And what I see predictive programming as, certainly with something like 9/11, we'll give some examples, because that's one of the biggest I've seen, is they're trying to get planning permission. This is the expression that came into my mind when you were talking there, because from their perspective of somewhat higher consciousness and somewhat higher awareness of the way things are, sort of in the universe and stuff, they can do something really atrocious and then turn around to us in a kind of spiritual sense. Well, you didn't object. You didn't say anything. We told you what we were going to do. We told you we were going to build this 10-story block of flats in your back garden, which will block off all your view of the countryside, and you never responded. We told you this. And you'll say, well, I didn't see the planning documentation for that. I didn't see you that we put it, on your front door, on the back of your front door. You just never saw it because you opened the front door without looking at the back, and you walk straight through it. Yeah, it's that type of mentality.
It's almost like if it was taken to court, they could get away with it by saying, "Well, we did kind of tell you." It's that. Yeah, it is that kind of mentality.
It is that kind of mentality. Obviously, not in the sort of normal sense that we understand it in terms of our everyday lives in a courtroom and so forth. But you could call it a higher awareness type of courtroom, as it were.
Yeah. Just a few comments there. So I think that's Maureen Waters. Lovely to see two of Truth Seekers Northeast favourite speakers. Thank you, Maureen. So yeah, shout out to Truth Seekers in the Northeast. Yeah. We did give a shout out a few weeks ago, I think, but fantastic group up in the Newcastle area. If you are in that area, when the groups can get going again, I think they're just going to do it anyway this year, from what I've seen.
I hope so. So.
Yeah. Do go along and watch some of the speakers there.
Martin's got it there, yeah. Martin got that last comment just come up. Yeah.
Yes, silence is consent. Yeah, that's basically what it is, Martin. Yeah, it is. If you're not kind of saying no, then they take that as approval, really. For people watching, if you do comment, put your name, please, or give StreamYard your permission, because I can't see you otherwise. We're going to go through the presentation now then. So again, as always, this is interactive. Throw it in the comments if you have any ideas, if you have any, if you've got any kind of predictive programming things that you can think of, examples you can think of, throw them our way. We're going to start by going through a few of the Simpsons. So I've got a few. There's probably much more, but I've just picked a few that we can discuss. Some of them are quite good. Some of them, I think they're a stretch. So we're going to start with this one. So this is a Chinese flu. So this was an episode of The Simpsons. A Saka flu hit Springfield, Part 1. And what I've done is just captured some screenshots there of a particular scene. And I remember this one quite well. I used to have this one on, I think I had it on VHS or something back when I was a kid. And really what's going on here is people are ordering stuff from China. It's being made in a factory. And you can see there that as they're making it or boxing it up, he coughs into the box. And you can see the little red germs, the little red pieces of bacteria as they're taping up the box. And then as the residents of Springfield begin to open it, you can see these flu particles, these bacteria particles flying out into their face. And what happens is everyone then becomes ill within Springfield, and they all come down with the flu, and they dub it the Chinese flu. So what do you make of that, Andrew? It's almost what's happening now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of this in various movies. Maybe you might have a couple of those. But yeah, I mean, there's one that was highlighted pretty recently, and you can look this up. I did make a couple of postings about this, and I think it was Dave Cullen did a video on it, and it was the 1979 German film called the Hamburg Syndrome, where they all come down with a flu-like illness in Hamburg. And if you watch the little video that somebody's put together, which is about 10 minutes of scenes, it's just exactly what's been going on now, and then taking us a bit into the potential future. One little thing I'll point out here with your slide, though, Kieran, is I think Osaka is in Japan, so I don't know if this is Japanese flu, but it's the same sort of idea. It's Far East, and the illness coming from there.
Yeah. Geography was never my strong point. Never ever my strong point.
So it's like you say, it's very strange, and I think this one has the sort of general concept, as you say, with the flu coming from a far eastern land and infecting people. But there are some, as you've probably got on some of your other slides, there's some very specific references, even more specific than this, because of course we had these other alleged pandemics. The swine flu was allegedly, I think, from the Far East, and the original SARS was, and then I think we had Hong Kong flu, didn't we? One that was 68, was it, or something? I can't remember all these.
Long before my time.
Yeah, it was only just in my time, actually. But there are other illnesses that are meant to have come from the Far East as well.
Yeah, I think one of the big ones is there's a film recently released on Netflix called Songbird, and it's about a virus I think they've called COVID-23 or something like that, as opposed to COVID-19, because it's set slightly in the future, and it shows lockdowns, it shows curfews, it shows a desolate, almost post-apocalyptic type future, and yeah, so I mean, is something we'll talk about throughout all of this. Is this simply the media, cartoons, entertainment programs? Is this simply them just kind of quickly catching on to something that's popular within the mainstream and kind of using it to gain an audience, or using it to gain a storyline? Or is it genuinely somebody predicting the future? I think both are quite believable. I think some more so than others. But I think what it might be, Andrew, is something that's always interested me, is why you always get a certain amount of films made about the same thing. So we always get post-apocalyptic films all come out at the same time, or you might get alien invasion films all come out at the same time. And people often think, well, is that just because, someone's seen one movie, so now they want to make one like it? And I don't think that's the case. I think it's all about the funding, because, of course, there are other films being made, just like there's other scientific studies being conducted. But it's all about the funding, and it's where the money men give their money, because I could write the best script ever, but if I don't have the money to make the film, I can't make it. So what they tend to do is give the budget to the filmmakers, the script writers, who are pushing a particular agenda that they want, and then out come all of the same type of films. That's what I think's happening. What do you think?
I think there's certainly an element of that, and a book I will mention was probably two books I can think of, one of which I've read and one of which I haven't. Because I think what we're talking about happens in music as well as in TV and film.
Yeah.
So the one that I think is worth looking at is Carl James's book, which is Science Fiction and the Hidden Global Agenda. I've got a free PDF copy of that on my website. There's 2 volumes of that, actually. So if anybody wants that, they can contact me via Check the Evidence. That's very good at pointing out some of these things that you're just mentioning there. And then, of course, Mark Devlin's written his books, The Musical Truth, which I think he's pointing out similar sorts of things, with elements of predictive programming in music as well. Although they're not quite the same as what we're going to discuss here, but I think it's a common theme. They try and sort of put these ideas out there, and they disguise them, sometimes very thinly and sometimes in quite sort of sophisticated ways. And I think, just to add to what you were saying, a lot of this you can write off as coincidence, and that's what most people would do. And, maybe some of these are indeed just coincidence. But then you get to the question of, you've probably heard this idea of an artistic muse, haven't you? Where a muse is something that gives you inspiration,
Yeah, yeah,
to write a new book or poem or something, or new song. And some people say, well, what you're doing is you're connecting into the collective unconscious, and you're downloading ideas. So, some of these predictive programming elements that you see, you could say, well, somebody's tuned into this higher consciousness, and that's given them this uncanny glimpse into the future. And there's one very good example, actually. You may be familiar with this, and it's not. I don't know. Is it predictive programming, or is it just actual precognition is what the word I'm looking for? And that's the story of the SS Titan, which was written, I think, in 1893 or something.
Yeah. I know where you're going. Yeah,
about a 20,000-ton ship which sailed from New York to London on its maiden voyage and sank when it hit an iceberg. And that novel was published, as I say, in 1893. So was that predictive programming? We can ask ourselves. You can go and look that up. It's a well-known story, and 100% verifiable. So make of that what you will. But that's not exactly what we're talking about tonight. But maybe it's
it's interesting, because obviously back in the 1800s they didn't have things like the Simpsons or anything to convey what was going to happen. They didn't even really have radio, so all they had was books and newspaper articles.
So was that somebody sort of tuning into the collective unconscious in the future, or was that the destruction of the Titanic already planned, or something like it, as a false flag? Which, of course, some people are saying that
that's possibly a show to talk about, actually, the whole swapping of the Titanic with its sister ship. Right, so let's move on, see if we can get this to work. So next, another quite big Simpsons one that they did was Trump. So on the left there, we have a female president, that's Lisa Simpson, in one of the episodes where they go into the future. And maybe that's predicting Kamala Harris. Just thinking out loud now. Because I remember seeing something where Kamala Harris wore a purple suit with the pearls around her neck at the inauguration, similar to what Lisa's wearing there. And of course, once Joe Biden officially stops being able to speak properly, and someone removes the hand from up his arse, then Kamala Harris will become the next president.
Well, he said, actually, there's a video clip that somebody sent me, and he actually says to her, well, when we disagree, blah, blah, blah. And then he says, well, if I get a fatal disease, or if I get a really bad disease, she'll take over. He actually says that. This was And I predict that's what happened before the end of his first 4 years. And what Lisa says there is we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump. And in 2000, they aired an episode where Trump became president, and they predicted it to happen in 2000 and don't quote me on this, was it 2004? But obviously it never did. And we can see there from a picture, he's coming down an escalator, people stood behind him, and it's quite eerily similar. He's even wearing the same coloured suit with a red tie. And yeah, this is quite a well-known prediction, supposedly, from The Simpsons. What do you make of this? Is it a prediction? I saw a quote from one of the Simpsons producers who basically said it was the most ludicrous outsider kind of cameo we could think of to put as a president at the time. I mean, I can think of a lot more than Trump. They just happened to pick him. Yeah. I mean, I don't know when he was doing The Apprentice. Probably was around that time that he was doing The Apprentice in the US, wasn't it? I guess. I'm just guessing. But it's very eerie, and it's hard to it's one thing to have him as president of the US, but to have that scene with him going down an escalator, I mean, that's extremely. And the exact scene there, I mean, was that set up? Did Trump deliberately choose, or did his advisors choose that department store or hotel or office, wherever it was? It's uncanny, to think that would be such a close match.
It is, but again, something that can be argued is the people that make these kind of programs are very, I guess, in tune with the elites. They're in it. They're in. Yeah, as George Carlin says, it's one big club and we ain't in it. And these kind of people are in the club, or they're at least on the very near periphery to the club, so they kind of know what's going on. Just want to bring some comments in. So Alex, hi Alex, says, any thoughts on hidden messages within vinyl records or music played on adverts? It's said that the music played in supermarkets can influence what we purchase. Yeah, it's a fantastic point. Something, another show I'm going to be doing soon, hopefully, is about reverse speech, and obviously that plays into vinyl records when they play them backwards. But yeah, I mean, what do you make of that, Andrew? There's obviously a lot of adverts, and they know how to play on it.
I think certainly just, the idea of playing music in stores anyway, you feel sort of more comfortable, more cheery. So you think, oh, well, I'll buy this, I'll buy that, or whatever. You've been just in a better mood generally. Whether they put subliminal messages or they, you'd be interesting to get some of these store soundtracks and, see if they've got like a reverse message overlaid in very low volume.
Yeah.
For instance, they have actually done that. They did it with these subliminal adverts with Coca-Cola, didn't they? I think in the 1970s, 1980s.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Cinema. They ran them in the cinema where they'd put up an instance of a Coke can, in the commercial break just for a split second, and you wouldn't see it, but it would register and make you go and buy a Coke, supposedly.
Right. Okay, and then Bernie's put. All right, Bernie, glad you're watching, mate. Hope you're keeping well. This reality is fluid. The past and present are running concurrently. We need to start looking at the world from a different position. Nothing is real. Now, Bernie, we share the same point of view on that. Absolutely agree. And that's how it would be easy to predict what was happening, because it's already happened, essentially. A very interesting point of view.
Just adding on to that slightly, I've talked to Bernie about this as well, and I think we were talking about living in a simulation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can regard it like that, and if you look at it like that, then somebody is running that simulation, or some group, or something, or some entity or group of entities or whatever it is.
Yep.
And they know how that simulation works, which would then, give them the ability to do things like predictive programming and stuff.
That's it. That's right. Yeah. And Bernie, I'll get you on at some point, and we can talk about your crazy travels that you have, your interdimensional travels. That should be a great show. Just a quick fun one. I'm conscious of time. I know we've still got over half hour left, but I've got a lot to get through. Just a fun one here. So Siegfried and Roy tiger attack. So the episode aired in 1993. You can see there they're making a tiger ride a bike, and then the tiger's had enough and decides to attack them. And then an attack actually did happen in 2003. I believe one of them was quite critical in hospital. Quite an easy one to predict, really. People are working with a tiger. It was probably going to happen. I don't think there's anything really to discuss about that one. I don't think it's a world-changing prediction. However, this one, now, this aired back in 2008, and it was all about when Obama was going up against John McCain. And then in 2012, when he was going up against Mitt Romney, what the Simpsons shown in this episode actually happened, and it was where evidence was showed of election fraud. Of course, the mainstream media will give evidence of election fraud when it suits them, but they won't do it in, for example, what's just happened with Biden and Trump. So we can see here, Homer goes to the voting station. He goes into this new electronic voting booth. Does he want Obama or McCain? You can see him pushing Obama, but it says that he's chosen John McCain. And then the scene continues on. Every time he pushes Obama, it says 2 votes for McCain, 3 votes for McCain, 4 votes for McCain, and the votes just keep going up. Again, is this a prediction, or is it quite, just something really that you could see happening with electronic voting systems?
I mean, they've got plausible deniability, haven't they? Because, in all of this, so,
It's very, very nicely put. I just think that, it obviously has happened, and it's probably been going on for a lot longer, even without the electronic voting devices. But is it a prediction? I think they're just taking the mick out of something that could easily be rigged, really. I don't think it really plays into anything too predictable. Again, just another fun one here. So we've got the canteen lady there taking some food out for the school children, assorted horse parts, now more testicles, and obviously we had the huge horse scandal in 2013 where particularly Tesco were selling horse burgers and horse meat. Again, anything in that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose it's maybe one of those things that the people running things know that these things are going on, and know that they're generally frowned upon and wouldn't normally come out. So I think this particular one they probably did know about, but it's sort of not exactly non-specific, but fairly non-specific in that it's a bit like politicians going to brothels, for example. We all know there's a proportion of politicians that are probably going to go to brothels, and whatnot, and all of that.
Yeah, I think
you get jokes about that, in maybe not in the Simpsons, but in certain other programs. And so that and then so and so could be like the next week you'd have so and so had up for being at a brothel and being doing whatever. So it could be a bit like that,
I think in fact in the Simpsons, Mayor Quimby is quite often with another lady and not with his wife. So I think that they do kind of play something on that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they obviously know a lot of this stuff goes on, and this is just their way of taking the mick, maybe, or just kind of trying to highlight it in a humorous way, a bit like Ricky Gervais's Oscar speech thing that he gave. Now, this is an interesting one. So it's recently been coming out about how Bill Gates is backing a plan to tackle climate change by blocking out the sun. And obviously, this is the article taken from Yahoo. There are other mainstream, if that's where you get your news from, there are other mainstream articles talking about this. And I just found it interesting how in The Simpsons they have this rich billionaire guy who strangely looks like Jacob Rothschild, if you put the two together, is trying to block out the sun with this weird contraption. In The Simpsons, it's because it will then force everybody to use more electricity, so he will make more money from his nuclear power plant. But again, you've just got these kind of rich guys trying to block out the sun. So is it possible that Matt Groening and other Simpsons creators have been aware that up in the upper echelons of these people talking about this kind of thing, that it's been spoken about for years, and this is their way of taking the mick?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, but these sorts of things have been around for quite a few years. I mean, I went to a conference at the Royal Society in 2009 where they were talking about this sort of thing, although this, as you see, the date there is much earlier than that. So, but yeah, I think this is probably an example of they know the sorts of themes that are going to be put out. I'd say this is a prime example of predictive programming in this particular one.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a really good example there. Now, not so sure on this one. So, episode aired in 1995 and supposedly shows the Shard in the background by London Bridge. I mean, does it, or is it just The Simpsons trying to draw a landscape of London? You've got Big Ben, you've got London Bridge just pipping over the top there. And they just thought they'd stick in another tall building to show that it was a capital city. Or is it the Shard? I've also taken note of the digital Big Ben there. In this episode, the Big Ben is digital. It doesn't have the hands. What do you make of that? Is it just them sticking another building into?
Interesting. I haven't seen that one before. And it does, I can't think of any other buildings like that in London. Like that one in The Simpsons does seem to match the Shard. So maybe. I mean, again, why would they?
Yeah.
Although you could say that certainly from that angle, the Shard does look like a giant obelisk, doesn't it? And it's obviously got a pyramidal sort of.
Yeah, I think the symbology of the Shard is a different story altogether. But why would the Simpsons? What are they getting out of predicting that? I don't really know, to be quite honest. Next, again, people watching, if you've got any comments or views on this, or any ones that you know of that we're not talking about, please let us know. This one's interesting. This one's always fascinated me. One of my favourite episodes. So this is where. But essentially, the whole point of this episode is they use children for the kids, including Bart, to join a boy band, and the boy band become really famous, and the Navy are actually using the boy band to send subliminal messages to the general public as a recruitment drive. So you can see here, this is their music video, and these three ladies they actually sing Ivan et Niage in the song, and backwards it is join the Navy. So it's a little bit but what you were mentioning there, Andrew, with the can of Coke that they flashed up in the cinemas back in the 70s you wouldn't really see it. And it's the same here. If you reverse speech it, as someone mentioned earlier with the records, you get join the Navy. And is this their kind of take on, trying to tell you that this happens, that this actually does happen?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I've not seen that one before either. And very interesting.
It is. And I think in this episode as well, it becomes quite apparent that these children are used, really. And I think that becomes quite apparent in our life. You do see these, even now with the vaccine, all these famous people that are coming out wearing the shirts, take the jab, all this kind of stuff. They're being used to push an agenda.
Exactly.
A couple of weeks ago, we had Jordan, or Katie Price, whatever she calls herself now, wearing a shirt saying, take the jab. Well, her son did take the jab, and he got rushed to hospital the weekend with adverse reactions to the jab. Obviously, don't wish him any harm, hope he's okay. But it just goes to show that she's pushing the jab. He has the jab, and it doesn't quite go to plan. So maybe it's backfired a little bit there. Smartwatches. No, it's not just the Simpsons that have predicted this. I mean, I'm sure there are other cartoons and films that have shown that phones and stuff can be used on a watch. This aired in '95. Obviously, smartwatches started to come out around about 10 years ago or so. What do you make of that? Is that just an easy win again?
Yeah, I think it probably is an easy one in terms of, the immediate thing that came to my mind was James Bond,
Yes.
Some gadgets in that. This is on par with that. There was a James Bond, I think it was one of the Pierce Brosnan ones where he's got a Nokia phone. I think it's actually a 9110 or 9200. I can't remember, because I used to work with Nokia phones years ago, so I knew some of the model numbers quite well. And he's controlling his Aston Martin with it. And, he's sat in a chair somewhere, and I think one of the villains has got in it and tried to drive it, and he flips his phone open and he starts driving it around the parking lot. I don't know if you remember that scene. Yeah. He's laughing his head off, And I was just literally watching a YouTube today of one of the Tesla cars, and Jeremy Clarkson's controlling it with an app. He wasn't driving it around with the app, but you can summon it. You can actually open your phone and get the car to drive towards you by itself. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. So that's interesting.
That's sort of predictable in one sense.
I think, but I want to ask, can it work the other way around? So obviously we see things like these sci-fi programs, things like Star Trek and Star Wars and stuff like that. And a lot of what they used to do back in the 70s and the 80s on the TV have started to come in now. Take this, for example. Is it almost the other way around, where tech companies will watch these kind of programs and go, that's a really good idea,
No doubt about it. The tech companies will watch some of the sci-fi and be inspired, and in fact, I think you'll probably find certain inventors have said that they watched Star Trek or something and thought, well, I want to invent that or something, or I want to develop something along those lines. So yeah, I think definitely some of that happens, of course. Yeah.
I would argue that. Getting towards the end of The Simpsons now, because there's a lot of other interesting stuff to talk about. This one's quite interesting. Curious George and the Ebola virus. You might remember Curious George. Did he have a tail or not? Who knows? But Ebola obviously was a huge outbreak in 2014. Was that a test run for COVID? I would argue yes. And this episode aired in '97. Again, is it an easy win? Are they just taking a random virus? Back then, Ebola wasn't really a thing, though. They kind of knew about it, but it wasn't really causing any harm, really. So have they just taken something? And
in that one, again, it's, you've got a specifically named thing, like the smartwatch thing that you just showed. That wasn't specific. It was just a fancy watch, whereas this is more specific. It's a named thing, Ebola virus, not Ebola something, but it's the Ebola virus specifically. So that makes me more, suspect that they really did know. They got a good view of the script that was coming up for the next few years, and they put it in.
Yeah.
My take on that.
Yeah, I would have to agree, because for me that's just too distinct in terms of what they've used to on the front cover there. Okay, so that was it for the Simpsons. So a bit of a hit and miss there for me with the Simpsons. Obviously, there's a lot more. If we trawled the internet and trawled the episodes for them, but some are on the money, and some I would say are just coincidences. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. This next one, don't want to talk too much about this one, but this one has always fascinated me. And what we have here is a scene from The Dark Knight Batman, released in 2008. And they're pointing at a map. They're talking about where they're going to target in Gotham City. Now, I'm quite a big Batman fan, and I've never come across anywhere in Gotham City called Sandy Hook. And what they're doing is they're picking places in Gotham City to target to commit terror attacks. And you can see there on the right hand side, they're pointing at Sandy Hook. They're saying, let's target Sandy Hook. Now, 4 years later, in December, there was again. Did it actually happen? There's so much evidence to suggest it was a staged false flag, and to the point where I actually believe it was a staged false flag. However, what are they doing? Are they kind of planting it in your head that at some point there's going to be an attack on Sandy Hook? I mean, what is Sandy Hook? It's just a school, kind of in the middle of nowhere, means nothing to no one. But what's the chances of Gotham City having a place called Sandy Hook that they're targeting?
Yeah, I mean, I saw this and I was pretty shocked by it, really. I mean, Sandy Hook is a very unusual name for a place anyway, I mean, you think of Fish Hook or, Coat Hook.
Yeah.
I don't know what this Sandy Hook, why it would be, I've never even looked at why it would be named like that in wherever it is in the US. So how is it coming up specifically highlighted in this film? So this does, again, somebody had mentioned earlier about Matt Groening possibly being a time traveler. Well, maybe he's not a time traveler himself, but he knows one, and I would say that the person that put this in knew one, potentially, because it's so specific. It's a target and it's Sandy Hook. It's not like saying, well, it's Sandy Hook as a holiday destination. It's actually a target, which is what it was for something, whether you believe it was a real event or staged or totally faked or a drill that went bad or whatever you think it was, it was a target for something, certainly a target for media attention, and it was Sandy Hook, Yeah,
I have to agree. Like you said there, Andrew, this one really shocked me when I first saw this one a few years ago. That a bit like the Ebola virus thing with the Simpsons there, that's just too specific for me.
Specific
to not be anything else. Okay, so that's just a one-off there. So we're going to move on to 9/11 now. So 9/11, obviously, people watching might be thinking, oh, not this again. But 9/11 was such a big topic. It's such a big life-changing thing for everybody. Everybody knows where they were 9/11. And we've got some examples we're going to go through now to show how this has been put into the mainstream, that almost like someone mentioned earlier, and you mentioned, Andrew, they're asking your permission, they're telling you they're going to do it. And there's just some examples here on the left hand side. You can see where you've got Sesame Street, I think that's the Cookie Monster, biting into the towers. Below that we have a comic strip, I think it's a French comic strip, with a plane sticking out of the side of one of the towers. We have the Simpsons again when they go to New York. He's holding up a Coach magazine, telling you that it's $9 to get a coach trip to New York, but you've got the towers next to it, so it looks like 9/11. To the right of that, we have a missile hitting the Pentagon. We have the towers being attacked just above that. I think that was part of a comic strip. And in the top right, this is my favourite, so I've left it till last. This is a Supertramp album cover. Now, the word Supertramp is backwards for some reason, and it just so happens that the U and the P of Super are over or above the Twin Towers, and the towers are blocking out the bottom of the U, so you only see the two sides, so it looks like 11, and the P backwards obviously looks like a 9. So there we have 9/11 directly above the Twin Towers. On the right-hand side, we have one of my favourite cartoons growing up, Johnny Bravo, and he's outside a cinema, and behind him is a poster for a film that shows you two towers on fire, and stuck over it is a sticker saying "Coming Soon." And this was aired April the 27th, so 5 months before the actual event itself. Yeah. And the bottom right, the Lone Gunmen. You know a bit about this one, Andrew. This was a spin-off of the X-Files, I believe.
Yes, so I understand. Yeah, Dean. There's a scene with Dean Hagland, and I mean Alex Jones had this on Infowars, I think, and he interviewed Dean Hagland as well at the sort of around the time this was sort of brought out onto the scene, and planes flying towards the World Trade Center. They're talking about terrorism and the plane crashing being a terrorist act. And then it pulls up at the last minute and just clips part of the aerial, I think, in this scene. You'll find it on YouTube, I think. But the point about this is that this is a funny sort of predictive programming, as I came to understand it, because as I came to know after a good few years of research, and you've covered this with Mark Conlon, and I think we Mark and I have covered this in other shows as well. There were no planes on 9/11, so this was like this had served two purposes. One was predicting what would happen on 9/11, but the other was cementing the fake story of it, which was that the planes were, going to crash into the World Trade Center. That was just the illusion that they created for you.
And in the film, I believe the plane is radio controlled as well, so I don't think it's actually hijacked.
Yeah.
I think it's controlled from elsewhere, which buys into the potential drone theory that could have happened. Okay, so we've got some more about 9/11, so we'll skip through these. So again, the heavily hyped summer 2001 blockbuster film Pearl Harbor. Now 9/11 has been dubbed the modern day Pearl Harbor. Reason being, because the Americans will call it that because it was an attack on American soil, really. But a lot of other people believe Pearl Harbor was a huge, not necessarily false flag as in it didn't happen, because it did, but the American government created it. They made it happen for a purpose, which of course was to join World War II. I believe. I'm not too sure on Pearl Harbor, but anyway. This film came out in the summer of 2001, and was it to kind of prep you that, look, the American soil isn't that easy to protect. It is it's not invincible. People can get in, people can hurt you, people can attack you. Was it prepping them for that?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I hadn't thought of that. I knew about the Pearl Harbor film, but I didn't know it was in August 2001. That's very interesting.
It is. And then below that we have an album cover for a hip hop group, The Coop, confirmed as being pre 9/11 by no less than the anti-conspiracy theory Snopes.com. So again, they got two. I don't know who these are, but rap artists or hip hop artists at the bottom, and above them the twin towers are smoking. They're on fire, and looks like they've been attacked.
It does, and the actual position of the fireballs is pretty close to what actually happened. And of course, the coup, well, some say the coup occurred when Kennedy was shot, and it was just been ongoing since then. So, this is very creepy. A lot of these 9/11 ones are very, very creepy.
They are, and we'll see as we go how creepy they can be. So here we have May 2001, Bouncing Souls album. That's the back of the cover there. We have the twin towers with a fist gripping it, breaking it up almost, and then the hand there on the right side, the black hand. It looks like it's got wings. Look, it's kind of outstretched its forefinger and its thumb, and it's got trail behind it, the smoke. So that could be the engines, and it's flying towards the towers. So again, what's that? May 4 months before the actual attack itself.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, hopefully, people that are watching this, you'll begin to see how this works. It does become more than a coincidence. The bottom there, we have an ad for Cordant Technologies in 2001, before 9/11 happened, so sometime before September. And again, there we have the skyline of New York City, twin towers with a plane flying towards it. Maybe they're also dropping chemtrails in there, I don't know. But again, on the face of it, it's just a standard stock image. It's a city, it's a busy city, people come and go, there's the aeroplane. But with what happened months after, it becomes questionable as a choice of an advert.
Oh yeah.
Interesting stuff. Now I like these ones actually. So this top one is a March 2001 New York magazine. We have the twin towers there at the bottom, and the lady covering her face in horror. She's scared. She's obviously seen something she didn't want to see. But we also have the one eye which is classic. Someone's put their NWO symbolism, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it. And obviously they've taken a quote there: "Is there life beyond the boom?" The boom of the Twin Towers falling, I assume that could mean. It's an interest. I like that. I like the imagery, the scared woman.
It's very interesting, isn't it? You know, and just while I was thinking of this, you know, whatever the process that's going on is, whether it's, you know, time travel or whatever it is, it's hard to comprehend that like this sort of imagery and these specifics, particularly with the 9/11 ones, could be coming through to various different artists. You know, obviously we've probably got some. He's not a cartoonist, whoever's drawn this, because it's not a cartoon, but we've had several cartoons and more as well. You know, movie designers. You know, are they all part of this Illuminati kind of, you know, network? How is it working? This is what, you know, fascinates me.
Well, yeah, and also that's how people that would call us nutters and say this is all a coincidence. That's
Right.
their argument. That's their argument as well.
Right.
You know, how does Joe Bloggs, who's just a standard front cover artist for New York Magazine, how did he know it was going to happen? But maybe he's been told to draw something like that. Maybe he's been told to commission. It's a valid argument from some people, but it's an argument I'm willing to debate. At the bottom there we have an internet game, early 2001, World Trade Center Defender. So we have the two Twin Towers there with planes sticking out the side there with some flames accompanying it. So standard symbolism there. This one's interesting. So for those that watch The Matrix, Neo's passport expires on the 11th of September 2001, and it's almost like what they're saying is the world ends as you know it. The Matrix is lifted, or there's another level of the Matrix being created, and it's going to happen on September the 11th, 2001. What do you make of that? That's how I've always interpreted that.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about the interpretation specifically of it, but it's incredible to think that they've got the exact date, you know, and it is this Neo character in the Matrix. And, you know, it is, for me, certainly the investigation of 9/11 was my route out of the Matrix, you know, one of the routes, definitely. So, you know, this again is a pretty specific reference with the date and the theme, you know, and of course you could argue that these characters in Neo's group are terrorists in the story, you know, of sorts. So it's an interesting, really, really interesting one. That
it is, and as you say, for yourself, this was your way out of the Matrix, and I think that's what I mean when I say what I said, that it's almost like Neo's passport expires. Then that's when he kind of wakes up and realizes the world that he's actually living in, and I think that event did that for so many people. Below that we have an Iron Man TV cartoon. The episode "The Grim Reaper Wears a Teflon Coat" shows the two towers being taken down by a rogue plane on the left hand side there, and there's that picture we saw earlier of an attack on the Pentagon. It's interesting they don't use a plane on the Pentagon, because obviously there was no plane attack on the Pentagon. It was some kind of missile. And that's what they're using there. So that's quite interesting that they're not using a plane.
So, yeah.
It could be telling you what's really happened. Now, I like this one. World Trade Center, an album called I Am the World Trade Center by an electronic rock band, Out of the Loop. And there's a track there, September. So I Am the World Trade Center, and they wrote a track called September. I did look at the running time, Andrew, thinking it's not going to be 9 minutes and 11 seconds, is it, or something like that? But no, it was just 3:31, and I couldn't make anything of it.
Well, you know, 3:31, read it backwards, 1:33. You know, it's.
I did look at it and think 3 times 3 is 9.
But I mean, that to me is the most blatant of all, because this of all the ones we've seen, because you're given the date. You're given the 11th of September, and you're given I Am the World Trade Center. So it's World Trade Center on September the 11th, whereas all of the others have either one or the other. They don't have both. And this has got both the date and the place and the year, in fact, because that's when it was released.
So again, you know, is this just him? He's recorded this in his basement, and how's he going to know about this? Or is it his record label have told him, you know, we should have an album, we should have a song on this album called September, and we should call the album...
To me, this cannot be a coincidence, but I don't know how it can not be a coincidence.
Yeah, it boggles the mind. You could think about it too much and think about how do they know this?
In case,
Now,
in case we didn't say it, the 11th track is September. If you didn't count down the list, that's
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not sure if we explicitly stated that, but you can see
We'll
that.
go back. Yeah,
So
just that's it. The 11th track down, September. So 9/11. So we're on to the last slide now, which is good. We've got 9 minutes left. Time is quite well. Now, I thought we'd talk about this one because this has made a bit of a resurgence lately because of COVID. So this is the 2012 Olympic opening ceremony, and underneath there, I've put Rick Clay on Red Ice Radio. Now, this, surprisingly, Rick Clay was you just spoke about 9/11 for you. Rick Clay was my gateway into this. I remember back then, people may have heard me say before when I had my knee operation and I was kind of immobile for a few months, and I got into this kind of stuff and was just listening to Rick Clay on the Red Ice Radio interviews. He did 2, I think, and I just listened to them on loop. I don't know if you've heard those, Andrew.
Oh yeah. I've actually got a DVD where I've been giving these out on DVDs for years.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Just guys, just search YouTube or BitChute or whatever and look for Rick Clay on Red Ice Radio and you'll get the videos. So someone's done quite a nice video where they've put pictures up to show what he's talking about because it's ultimately a radio interview. But they put pictures.
Yeah, if you look for Transition of the Ages.
Yes, yeah. And there's some nice pictures and images to show you so you don't get bored just listening to it. But ultimately he talks a lot about the symbolism with the upcoming, it hadn't happened at the time, the upcoming 2012 Olympics and certain things that he was discussing about the particular positioning of the building of the Olympic Stadium and all that stuff. But what he spoke of has kind of come to fruition. So what we have here, and I'm mainly focusing on COVID here, but what we have on the top left there is a picture of the stadium from above, and they've lit it all up, and I don't know what it's supposed to be, not a clue what it's supposed to be, but anybody that tells me that doesn't look like how they picture the coronavirus now is deluded, because that's exactly what that is. It can't be anything else. I mean, that is so obviously COVID.
Absolutely. I mean, anybody that, watches that 2012 Olympics ceremony, it's really just very, very dark stuff. And I mean, I saw the Rick Clay material soon after it came out, and when I saw the 2012 Olympic ceremony, I only watched bits of it. I couldn't stand to watch all of it.
Yeah,
immediately see what was going on, and it really I thought, no, I'm just not going to watch this because I don't know what they're trying to put into my brain. I just really did not want to watch it, and I was saddened because Mike Oldfield, who I'm a big fan of, he got involved in it as well.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I think what you said there is true because I mean, you see some opening ceremonies and they're upbeat, they're happy, and then you look at this and you've got that there. Now on the right hand side, we have this is them obviously. It's in England. They're promoting England. That's what they do when they have these kind of opening ceremonies. They brag about where it's being held and the traditions and the everything that's going on in that country at the time. And what we have here is a bunch of hospital beds and nurses running around dancing. Of course, they didn't have TikTok back then, so they were just dancing for the opening ceremony. And what they're doing there is they're dancing around death. And that big puppet thing you can see there, whether it was supposed to be based on like a J.K. Rowling character. Because you can see it holding like a big one there, so maybe they were trying to big up Harry Potter and the fact that J.K. Rowling was English. I don't know, but it's clearly death, and it's amongst
without the scythe. They've had to. If they'd made that into a scythe, it would have been too obvious.
Too obvious. That's exactly right.
Change it.
And it's death in the middle of a hospital with these nurses dancing around it.
Yeah.
And on the bottom left, we have this big blonde buffoon. The puppet, not the guy in the top right there. The puppet in bed, in a hospital bed. The nurses will be dancing around him. Is that the prediction of Boris Johnson being in hospital for COVID? It's just too much for me. This, I mean, and there's more we couldn't talk about, but I've obviously tried to keep it short.
So much, they've actually got. You've got to remember, for example, that they had the winning of the Olympic bid announcement on the 6th of July 2005, and then they had the alleged bombings, which weren't bombings actually, on the 7th, the day after.
The day after, yeah.
So it's all hooked into it. It's all hooked into it. And then you'll see, I think it's at, I always get them mixed up. I think it's at the end. It's either at the end of the Beijing ceremony or it's in the 2012, and I get them mixed up. There's a whole sequence where they actually do a replay of the bus bombing in the ceremony. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, I'll send you the link after.
Send me that, yeah.
Oh, it's just like horror. When you see it, it's just disgusting. It's really horrible.
This is the thing, these are supposed to be fun, celebratory times, and we've got people dying in hospital, a big image of death there floating around. The would-be leader. I don't know if at the time Boris Johnson was the mayor of London.
He was, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, which could be why they've got him there.
Maybe he'd gone in the running for it, because I don't know when he switched, because it was Ken Livingstone, but I don't know when he was.
Yeah, that'll be something to look at. But that could be why they've got him in the bed, which of course happened.
Yeah.
And then bottom right, so again, for another show completely, but Zionism, Zionists, the people that really run the world are Zionists. And something that Rick Clay was quite clever with was this, and he took the 2012, and that's clearly what it is. It's a 2012. It's the 2012 London Olympics, but he dissected it, and as you can see below, that clearly spells Zion. There's no, you can't argue that with me. It says Zion, and you've even got the dot for the eye, for God's sake. You've even got the dot for the eye. Why is that dot in there? What, when you look at the 2012 part, the bit at the top, why do you need that dot?
Yeah,
it's doing nothing for the for that logo. However, it does a lot for the logo below it when you take it out and make it Zion. And of course, when you watch or listen to Rick Clay on Red Ice Radio, he talks a lot about how the intentions of making England and London almost the new Jerusalem, shall we say. He quotes a lot of William Blake, and if you go to the rugby and you listen to Jerusalem and stuff like that, you hear on England's green and pleasant lands, and it's quite an interesting symbol, I think, to have Zion in the Olympic logo. Absolutely.
And Rick Clay goes through a lot of other stuff as well, and he links it into consciousness and various other things. And he himself came to a sad demise because he died in 2008. And my understanding was that he was buried on the 11th of September.
Yes, and it was suicide, supposedly. Yeah. Do I believe that? Not for a second. No. Again, too many people in his positions do. So if ever I or Andrew get suicided, we didn't do it. someone got to us. Right. So I think we'll kind of start rounding it off there. So thank you everyone for watching. It's a fascinating subject for me. It's brought some stuff back for me because, like I say, it was back in 2012 that it was when I first saw this in 2012. The Olympics had happened when I saw this for the first time, which kind of allowed me to see a bit more of what he was saying. Obviously, back in 2008, when he was making these claims, a lot of people, it was easy to dismiss, wasn't it? Because, what's he on about? It hasn't even happened yet. But yeah, have you got any final thoughts on predictive programming, Andrew, what we've discussed there?
Well, I think there are certain, like I was just thinking while you were showing the picture of the Olympics, I could never have even, I said that I was aware of this before the ceremony started and I couldn't watch it. But even, I think I probably did watch bits of it after it happened, but there's no way, for example, I could have looked at that and then predicted something like the coronavirus pandemic from it.
Yeah.
So, maybe somebody could have done that, but I couldn't. So it still works even when you uncover some of it. They could still, in other words, just be cognizant this sort of thing goes on, and be very wary of anything that's going to get mass exposure, like say the Olympic ceremony or a Hollywood movie that tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people are going to end up seeing. You can pick out certain themes that recur in the mass media, and they could give you some sort of cues into the sorts of themes that are going to emerge and be put to you as being real things to scare you when actually they're not. They're part of this simulation or this illusion that they want you to believe in.
Yeah, I think that's I can't really top that. You know, it is just a case of know that it's happening, guys. It's happening every day now with the coronavirus that's going on, what they're telling you on the news, the adverts that you're seeing. They're prepping you for these different variants. They're prepping you for the vaccine passports. The reason people like us know that this is going to happen is because we see the world like this. And once you know the script, you know how it's going to play out. And we were nutters months ago for saying there's going to be a vaccine passport, but lo and behold, there's going to be a vaccine passport. So it's easy to see, really. So again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Andrew, for joining me and for your very thoughtful input. We've got some interesting shows coming up going forward. Going to have a show on UFOs with a guy who's a big researcher into UFOs. Me and Andrew are going to be back for a show on Pizzagate. Now, it's very controversial. We're going to discuss essentially paedophilia within the higher ranks of society. Won't be for the how do you word that? It won't be for the squeamish or it's a very touchy subject basically, and it's something we've had to think hard about. Are we actually going to do it? But we are, because it's quite an important one to discuss. And yes, and hopefully I can get Bernie on to come on and talk about his interdimensional travels as well. That should be interesting. So thank you, Andrew. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week. Don't stay safe. Go out, enjoy your life, get muddy, meet your friends, see your family, and live your life. Until next time, take care.